crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Sit there and think about it, like, ooh, who else is coming up? Real quick, One Docs. This is a team that's starting off at USL League One, made their announcement saying, hey, we're going to take FC Tucson spot. And decided, like, oh, we're going to spend a shit ton of money to go get everyone. What is the recruitment strategy over there?
It's kind of wild to see how One Knox is doing it. It's like wild to see how One Knox is doing it versus how Lexington is doing it. Because they're taking two very different paths.
It's like opposite.
I want to ask you guys about that. Let's dive into that a little bit. On one hand, you have One Knox that is like kind of, I guess, quote unquote, taking the Galacticos approach of like, we're going to buy the stars, we're going to buy the proven quantities, we're going to spend the bulk of our money on our starting 11, and then the roster spots might be sparse. Where Lexington is like, oh, we're going to play the kids and we're going to invest in the youth. And we're kind of going to flesh out the 11 and the bench so there's a little bit more balance. What do you think about those approaches so far?
I think they're both leaning more towards – I think they're both going like we want to grow our academy, but they're doing it in two different ways. One's like we're going to buy the academy and make it fit into what we need. And the other one is we're going to live and die by the academy and make it grow into what we need.
Yeah.
So it's a built versus bought type situation happening, and you got to see which one is going to win.
Well, and I remember when Chip and I talked to Sam Stockley, who's now the head coach, but he was the sporting director, and he emphasized, like, we want to have a team down the road. We want to be able to win with homegrown talent. Like, that was his big emphasis. And that was kind of the plan of what they're going to do at Lexington. They were going to have this pipeline where they have this academy, then they can maybe get either USL 2 or the USL League 1 team and win with that. And then those players can, venture off to wherever. So I think I'm not surprised that Lexington went with that approach. I think the thing that's probably the most interesting about it is, on the one hand, it is a live or die, but on the one hand, you're going to have young, hungry players that want to prove themselves and show, I have what it takes to move on to the next level. But you also deal with the inconsistencies. It's like what we saw with all the MLS2 teams. You have young players that want to prove themselves, and on their day, they can beat anyone 4-0. But then because that inexperience starts showing, and you're having 18, 19, 20, 21, young players, and they're going to go against, say, a Greenville, it's like that. They're going to get a lot of hard lessons from that experience. You're going to play in Omaha where they have that winning mentality, and you're going to have a lot of – that's where I think it's going to be interesting is – how consistently can these young players do it when, especially going up against more of the experienced sides or teams that have more of the experience coaching. While with Knoxville, I think they saw, okay, this is what the level was in League 2. We know we need to take at least a step up. Let's make sure we get the guys that are proven quantities. And we know, okay, they have league experience. That's what Ford Madison did. They said, we're just going to get guys that know this league, and that's going to be our roster. And I think Knoxville's going with that same approach. And then let the eventual academies, because they just bought, or I think they did like a new initiative where they more or less combined another academy or two down there. And they're going to say, we'll let them catch up. But in the short term, we're going to try and win and make sure we can prove that we can belong in the league. And then eventually the academy will catch up. Well, Lexington's like, we're just going to fucking go for it right now.
Yeah, because they took similar approaches to their academies, right? Like that both of them, they have huge academies in the area, like in Knoxville and in Lexington, that combined. And so like their systems are both massive now coming into this because Knoxville's doing the same exact thing in a sense of combining two academies in the local area to create the One Knox Academy. So you've got like two really massive academies that I think are going to be incredible for the long term for League One, just in terms of just like the growth of the league and things like that. Because up till now, we haven't really, outside of MLS, we haven't had anything like that. And there's been a lot of talk of can we really do anything with young players? Can we attract young players to the league when they could take a chance somewhere else? They could take a chance at an MLS two team and potentially get MLS spots. But now we've got these pathways. We're creating pathways. And I think that's really exciting because
Can you even say that MLS is doing it well? Because you're not seeing that MLS 2 to MLS pathway, really, you're seeing just the academies because you have to have one. You're seeing more people make the jump from USL Championship to MLS at this rate. So that system that's being built, really cool. I got to talk with the USL front office a little bit while I was in Philly, and they were just explaining that path line of like, how do we get you all of the tiers so that it makes sense for you to operate long term. And you can see it with, well, really South Georgia to Menta is like the model, right? You like USL is not sustainable without that model of Tormenta. So does Lexington? I think Lexington is doing it the South Georgia way, and Knoxville's doing it the NCFC way, and eventually someone's going to have to figure out which is going to be the best way to get all of these teams into a really good structure of making everything fit and getting those academies to be as big as possible, because that's truly going to be our future in the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah. And it's interesting though, because if you look at the 3 recent USL League One to some form of MLS in terms of Ethan Bryant, Eric Leonard, and Ryan Jiba, none of them are from teams that have really academies. Like Richmond's probably the closest that had something, but like Fort Madison doesn't have an academy. Omaha doesn't have an academy. It's stuff that or a fleshed out one. So it's interesting that while you see like that pathway, it's still also we have these clubs that have like talented players that are going to go over to this MLS Next Pro and then maybe shoot up to the MLS. So there's now like 2 or 3 different routes. Like there's the go straight up through USL to MLS, or there's this go to USL League One, career over to MLS Next Pro, and maybe go from there. Or in Jiba's case, just go straight to MLS.
Well, I mean, it's going to be interesting either way how you look at it. So fans, let us know. Like, what approach do you think you would rather have your club do? Would you rather take the One Knox approach or the Lexington approach to it? So it's interesting either way. All right, next team. Let's talk about it. I think let's talk about Greenville. Greenville got some interesting things going on. Got a new stadium. They're playing at Foreman's College.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, yeah.
Furman's football stadium.
Yeah. As far as transfers go, I haven't. I don't know if you guys have seen the same, but I haven't seen a lot from them. What do you think is going on in Greenville? Is it going to be a shakeup down there or not? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
I think.
I mean,
yeah, it's kind of hard.
Because it's not like they're running.
I mean, it's always a hard loss of Jake Keegan, right?
And Paul Christensen deciding I'm going to be a pastor. Yes. Bye. I don't know. Like, I don't think they're fully running it back with their core, but I mean, they kept a good amount of their core though. Mm-hmm. Like, if you look at who they brought back, it was most of the main contributors from last year.
But look how long it took for them to announce that.
Well, and that's where I think things are starting to, like, this is probably where we got to get some young players in here because we have this group that is old or has a lot of mileage. And we got to figure out, like, how many of these guys do we really want to keep? And I think it was notable where with Keegan and Christensen, both those were announced early. So it was like, okay, we know they're not coming back. And then it was just a big gap of we don't know what the hell Greenville's doing. And Greenville's like, okay, here's the guys that we're returning, and then nothing again. And I don't know if this is just more of they're still working things out and it's just getting things like finalized, or I'm sure they have a plan, but also did Greenville see what everyone else did first, and then they're going to be like, okay, this is what they're doing, this is how we counter it. Yeah. We'll let Brandon decide.
No, I think that's a great question. I am really excited about the Tevin Shaw signing, though. I think I said that a couple weeks ago. I'm hyped about that. That's going to be huge for our defense. I think that was we were really good at getting the ball forward last year, but we had a pretty hard time protecting our back line.